Hello, I'm Tony Guida. This is My New York. When was the last time you visited Radio City Music Hall? Walked through its magnificent grand foyer to your seat in that breathtaking showplace and thrilled to the precision of the Rockettes. You may not know that New York nearly lost the music hall nearly 40 years ago. Rockefeller Center decided to shut it down. It took a gutsy campaign by the music hall's show people to save it. That campaign was led by a dancer, Rosemary Novellino, and she's written a book about it. You'll meet her next. I am happy to welcome to the program Rosemary Novellino, author of Saving Radio City Music Hall, a dancer's true story. Welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
I'm glad you are here. And just to prevent any confusion for our audience, you were Rosemary Novellino when all the events in this book took place.
That's right.
And today you are Rosemary Novellino-Mearns.
Yes, she is.
So that will explain that. Anyway, in this lovely book, you describe yourself in your youth as a tomboy. And I'm wondering, how did a tomboy from Glen Rock, New Jersey, end up as a dancer in the Radio City Music Hall Ballet?
My parents, probably it was their fault because they were worried about me being a tomboy, so they sent me to ballet school. Which I didn't want to go to.
Really?
No, I didn't want to go. I'd rather play baseball and climb trees with the boys. But somewhere around 11 years old, something went snap. And I thought, ooh, I like this. I like this. And by the time I was a young teenager, I had decided that this was going to be my passion and I wanted to be a ballet dancer. And then my parents were like, oh no, we can't have her go into show business.
And you got, what was it, 3 tryouts at Radio City before they hired you?
Yeah, I auditioned 3 times. I went way before I was ready. I was, I think, 15 or 16. Because our teacher, Irene Vokeen, said, go in, audition, learn how to do that, which was great advice. And I finally got in 1966, although I was let go twice.
Right.
Yeah.
They shut the core down a couple of times. And
well, no, I was just fired twice.
Yeah.
And then when I came back, I stayed for a long time and became the dance captain. And it wasn't until 1975 that they actually got rid of the ballet company as a permanent group.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, listen, it's not a stable profession.
No, it's not.
So, something like this profession. I hear some people in the audience, they're screaming at their television sets right now going, Radio City Music Hall Ballet? And I have to confess, I did not know there was a Radio City Music Hall Ballet. I think of any dancer female dancer at Radio City as a Rockette. So tell us.
There were 2 separate.
Educate us.
Yeah, I will. I'll be glad to. The Rockettes were the stars. They still are. And there was a permanent ballet company, and the ballet company at Radio City was the first permanent ballet company in this country. I think that's kind of cool.
Wow.
Yeah. But nobody knew we existed. We were like the stepchildren because the Rockettes were the stars. And there was this friendly rivalry between the 2 groups. And we even lived on separate sides of the building. The Rockettes were on the 51st Street side. The ballet was on 50th Street. But the ballet company was there from 1933 and permanently until 1975. Then we came back, 1974 we were let go. 1975 we came back, but we weren't permanent anymore. We were hired per show.
We're talking about a time, and perhaps some in our audience don't remember, but Radio City was at one point the premier tourist attraction in the city. and it was a grand movie palace and show place.
Yes, it was.
Movies, what, 6 a day, 6 showings a day, and then the
Four
shows. 4 shows.
Four
a day.
shows. 5 movies, 4 shows.
Yeah. It didn't start that way, but we don't need to go back. I mean, it started as a purely live theater venue and attraction. Didn't really work out.
Right.
And within a few months, they went to this format. And for many of those years, or maybe even most of those years, Radio City showed first-run, exquisite, great movies.
Fabulous movies. And when you look at the list of films, it is mind-blowing. And the production companies, the movie studios, would fight to get their movies in there. Because in its heyday, if a film played the music hall, it was an instant success. Oh, it's at music hall. Oh, it must be a hit.
Yeah.
And that's the reputation it had. It was very exciting.
I don't need to gild the lilies, so to speak, but no less a person than Brendan Gill talked about the Art Deco interior and the structure itself, and called it one of the most beautiful, exhilarating, and irreplaceable of the city's physical structures. But it began to lose money. And obviously, Rockefeller Center, Inc. Didn't think it was one of the irreplaceable structures, because one day in late 1977, they say, it's gone.
That's what they said. They had decided that it was losing too much money and they were going to close it.
I'm going to show the announcement here in
Okay.
a second that the president of Rockefeller Center, Inc. made. But let's just dip our toe into that water for a minute. It was losing money and it was showing really lousy movies. And in your book, you suggest that that wasn't by accident.
I did suggest that. From actual facts, they were booking bad films in there on purpose because they needed to show a loss, because they wanted the building down. Rockefeller Center had its own construction company and its own real estate company. They still have a real estate company. And they wanted it down, and they wanted to build a glass box. And this was really divulged in the New York Times. Huxtable was her name.
Ada Louise Huxtable.
Yes. And when we read that article, it was like,
Well, here's the announcement from the president of Rockefeller City. Why do I keep saying that? Rockefeller Center
Radio
Incorporated
Music Hall, yes.
in late 1977.
I'm announcing the closing of Radio City Music Hall at the end of the 1978 Easter show on April 12th.
One final question. Is there any chance the music hall will stay open?
No.
Well, he was pretty arrogant and patronizing, wasn't
you think? Every time I hear that, my stomach goes like this and I want to hit the wall. It still makes me furious. And it was almost 40 years ago. It was 38 years ago.
We should just touch on one thing that's in your book. In terms of booking bad films, and as you say, trying to show a loss, wanting to show a loss to effect this, change and build something there, build a condominium or an office building. Apparently, they said no to Superman, the first Superman film, Warner
Big
Brothers.
one, yeah.
Tell us.
I got a phone call. I was in the dressing room, and the stage manager called me. And we never were allowed to get phone calls on the stage level. That was strictly for the stage managers. And he said, "Rosie, there's a phone call for you down here." I said, "Uh-huh." He said, "It's a guy from Warner Brothers." I went, "What?" So I had my robe on. We lived in robes between shows, and I went flying down there. And I went up to the stage manager. I said, "What did you say?" He said, "It's the guy from..." And I picked up the phone. I didn't know who was going to be on the other end, and I said, "Hello?" And the nicest man by the name of Mark Martin introduced himself, said that when he was young, he had been a member of the ballet company, and he had seen me on the Tom Snyder Show, and he said, I want to tell you something. Warner Brothers wants to help save the music hall. And I'm just sitting there going, what? And he said, they want to put Superman in, because that was the big film that was coming out. And the music hall said, no, thank you. And I said, Mark, if I give you my home number, can we talk when I get home?
Sure.
And he said yes. And Bill came home with me, and Mark called, and we talked for an hour.
Talking about Bill Mearns, your husband.
Yes, who I met at Radio City Music
You met
Hall.
there.
Yes.
Anyway, let's go back to that moment. Alton Marshall makes that announcement, and you, as you say now, 40 years later, you're still furious. And you just, I don't know, sort of automatically or somehow organically decided, we're going to fight this.
That's absolutely true. Something just swelled up in me. I guess you can say it was passion. And I thought, no, we can't do this. And because I was dance captain, I had an office. And Bill and I went down to that office, because this was made very early in the morning, the announcement. And I said, we have to do something. What are we going to do? I don't know what to do. I was a ballet dancer. I've never done anything like this, but I was angry, nervous. All those emotions were going. And I looked at the window, and I knew that NBC, where you were, was across the street. And I thought, I'll call NBC. That's what I'll do. And I was scared to death.
And
but I
you did
picked
call.
up the phone, and I called NBC. And somebody there gave me another number to call and another number to call. And I was booked on a local TV show for the next morning, and they wanted, a couple of Rockettes. Of course, you always have to have Rockettes for the glam. And Bill and I went over to the vice president's office on the other side of the building. And I marched in my shepherd's costume, because we were doing the Christmas show. And he said, sit down. I said, I don't want to sit down. And I just got some kind of courage and passion, and I put my fist on his desk. I thought that was going to show, something strong. Theater, it's all theater. And I said, I'm going to try to save the music hall. And he sat back like this. And I said, look, I need Rockettes, and I need da-da-da-da-da. I'm doing a show tomorrow morning. Can I have it? And he said, he stammered. He seemed shocked. And he said, sure, do whatever you want to do. And Bill and I walked out. We shook hands, gave each other a hug, and went and did the nativity. And then I gathered people, and we did the show the next day.
Which was probably the first step toward the formation of a committee called Show People to Save Radio City Music Hall.
It was when we came back from that show that I said to Bill, okay, we've got to do something. And we made an announcement to call a meeting in the large rehearsal hall after the first show. And there were blackboards on both stage doors. And so I wrote the announcement on one side, Bill wrote it on the other side, and we went up, got out of our costumes really fast after the show, and we're up in that large rehearsal hall by ourselves. And we were leaning against, there was a ballet bar across the mirror, and we were reading an article in the New York Times, and the door opened. The door had a distinctive squeak. And it opened, and the first person to walk in was not a Rockette, not a ballet dancer. It was a musician, followed by a stagehand.
And why was that important?
Because I'll say guys, but there were women in the orchestra, those two groups had the strongest union and the most power in the theater. And I thought, when I looked in the mirror and I saw them walk in, I thought, this is serious, if those are the first two to walk in here. And soon there were almost 300 people standing in front of me.
Wow.
So.
And out of this came all sorts of things. Other appearances on television, publicity stunts you guys pulled off, that got a lot of coverage. All of this, again, you didn't know how to do any of this, and I guess luckily you had some guidance from somebody in the media who I happen to remember, and I was delighted to see his name in your book, who was a friend of mine, Art Athens.
He was
wonderful.
a great
radio reporter at WCBS Radio.
Yeah.
But Art had been an usher.
Yeah. He
at
came
Radio
up to
City.
he came up to Bill and I right after the announcement because we stood there like dumbfounded, and he introduced himself. I knew who he was, of course, and I had heard him on the radio, and gave us his card and told us if there was anything he could do. And I just looked at him, and he said, "I was an usher here when I was a kid. I want to help." And I think he interviewed Bill and I at that point, and I took his card. I said, "Thank you." He said, "I mean it." And after we did that first show and we didn't know what to do after this big meeting, I looked at his card and I said to Bill, "I think it's time to call Art." And I called him, and you know him. What a wonderful man he was. Oh, God. And he was a huge help. He gave us guidance. He told us when to do publicity stunts.
Yeah, he gave you some of the basics. I mean,
Yes, he did, which you know.
Rosie, you got to form a committee.
Yeah, he did.
You got to get petitions.
Right.
If you're going to do publicity stunts, do them on the weekend because
Right.
those are slow news days.
Sunday and Mondays are slow news days. I don't know if that's still true, but it was in 1978. He helped us get the Hilton Hotel around the corner, gave us an office for free for 3 months. That was because of Art. He managed that for us and introduced me to the woman that managed the Hilton Hotel. And the businesses in the area didn't want the theater to close either. It would have affected them, including the Hilton Hotel.
Sure, the Hilton's
Yeah.
3 blocks away?
Right.
Maybe the capper, I don't know if you would describe it that way, but in terms of this publicity campaign, you and another person from the committee got on the Tom Snyder,
Right.
the Tomorrow Show.
Yes.
Network. Now you've got the network.
Yes, and they flew us out to California. And I was excited. I did it with one of the other singers, Ron Holkoff. And we were both excited, but we were both so nervous because we felt like we had the responsibility of 500 employees on our shoulders. And this was our first national spot. And I used to watch Tom Snyder every night because he was such a strong, interviewer, and he asked such pointed questions. I'd come home from the music hall and turn on Tom Snyder. And now I was going to be in the chair, and I got nervous because we were still working for them. And just before we went out,
Sure, that was an NBC show.
we found out that was the point where we found out that Rockefeller Center was vehemently against saving the music hall. We didn't quite get that yet. In the beginning, it was very much, oh, we're going to do this, like a Mickey Rooney movie. And then all of a sudden, when all these horrible truths started coming into view, it wasn't a Mickey Rooney movie anymore. It became a deadly, serious battle against the Rockefellers. And it was a David and Goliath story. We were definitely the little people next to that corporation or family or whatever, however you want to describe them.
Yeah, you say it was slow to dawn on all of you how
Yeah.
serious
Right.
Rockefeller Center was. I mean, we showed the announcement, and you could see he was pretty
He was serious.
definite and arrogant. But just to set the timing for our audience, he makes that announcement, Marshall makes that announcement sort of in December of...
It was January.
January
The Christmas
7
show was still going on.
January of 78.
First week of January, right.
And says we're going to close this place at the end of the Easter show, which is maybe
April
what,
12th.
3 months later?
April 12th, that's
April
right.
12th.
3 months.
So you've got 3.5 months to
do this.
put together a campaign against the Rockefellers.
That's right.
And you did.
Yes, we did.
Among the other things, so there's constant publicity, and you're doing stunts, and you're doing all kinds of stuff, doing interviews. And one of the ones I loved in your book was this, what do you call it, armor? Tell us about that.
The show that we were doing, the Easter show at the time, the ballet, one of the numbers we did were in these huge, adorable looking rabbit costumes. Peter Gennaro had done the show. And I thought, gee, we used to go out and get people on the line to sign petitions.
Right.
I thought we should go out in the rabbit costumes. So I got permission to go talk to the head of publicity. And I said, we would like to do this. And before I even got it out of my mouth, she said, no. I said, well, let me finish asking the question. No. I tried 3 times, and it was no. And I walked out of her office, and I thought, gee whiz, they didn't even let me. So I would call my brother, Nino Novellino, almost every single day, and I would tell him, or he would call me, what happened, what happened, what happened? And I told him about this. And his wife called me back in the ballet dressing room about a half hour later, and they owned a company called Costume Armor. They did sculpting for Broadway, and they did all theatrical armor, Man of La Mancha, all that kind of stuff. And Mary said, how about we send you down a lot of armor? And I went, what? And she said, we'll send you armor.
Knights and
I said, oh my God, fighting the battle, armor.
Fighting armor.
And she said, yeah, we'll send you all these suits. She said, I'll call you back in a little while. I'm going to send a full suit of white armor. That has to go to Bill. I said, absolutely. And they sent female breastplates for the Rockettes and everything. And they sent a lot of armor. And Art had told us how to contact Associated Press and all that. And we set it for Sunday after the first show. And we went out there, ballet, rock had singers. I think there were a couple of musicians in there. Boom, we went out and we opened the door and the press was already there. And as I was being interviewed for, I think it was NBC, I'm standing there and out the executive entrance was this woman who had said no to me, and she was going across the street. And my memory of this was like a cartoon, that she caught my eyes, I caught her eyes, and her eyes came out of her socket like a cartoon right up to mine, and there was fury in her eyes.
Yeah.
And I thought, we're not in the rabbit suits. Too bad.
No. And
And it was a great publicity stunt.
Well,
It got a lot of attention.
I mean, you got, from nothing, you got a ball rolling that continued to grow and continued to build in its intensity and in the intensity of the attention you were garnering, to the point where you got, I think you say, 150,000 signatures on petitions.
Yeah.
You had Yul Brynner's support. You had Cheetah Rivera's support. You had Cliff Robertson, the actor's support. You had Arlene Dahl's support.
Was great.
You even got a telegram from Maya Plisetskaya, the famous Russian ballerina.
My idol, yes.
Yes. I mean, this had become an international
It did.
issue. And so comes the landmark hearing, and our arrogant friend, Mr. Marshall, says this.
Landmark designation will bring about another negative accomplishment. It will leave me no choice but to apply for a permit to demolish the structure the day after such designation goes into effect, so that at the end of 305 days I will be free to act.
That one makes me mad too.
You were in that room.
Oh, yes, I was. I was one of the people booing. Yes, because I had to give a speech. A wonderful, wonderful man who we're still friendly with by the name of Dr. Joseph Rosenberg wrote us a letter, and he was the one who guided us through the landmark process. And I call him Joe because we're still good friends. And he's the one who gave us some very important information about landmarking and told me exactly, you have to give a speech, you have to do these petitions. You know, I had so much help from so many people. I didn't do this by myself, Tony.
Right.
Nobody does this kind of thing by themselves.
And Landmarks decided to vote, in effect, give you what you were seeking, which was designation of the interior, which was the important thing, of Rockefeller, of Radio City as a landmark. And comes shortly, not long after this hearing. And I was charmed to see this tape of you after you got word of the announcement. This is Rosie announcing.
I ran to the phone and called one of our vice presidents, John Jackson. He spoke to me briefly for a second and put me on the phone with Music Hall's attorney, Alan Jaffe. And Alan Jaffe said, tell everyone the musical has been saved and to report to work tomorrow. And I said, thank you. And I got off the phone and ran back in here. It's just, I can't believe it.
Yeah, that's when it was saved, April 12th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1978.
Yep.
Do you even believe it now? I mean, you believe, obviously, the music hall is there, but do you believe what you accomplished? Do you?
Yes and no.
I mean, it took you a long time to write this book.
It did, because I was very hurt.
Well, you were fired. You were blackballed.
Blackballed. Bill and I both were blackballed. And it took us a year to find that out. Part of me was naive because I thought, oh, they don't know who I am. Right. You're on every TV show. You're leading the march like Joan of Arc. But I didn't think the Rockefellers paid any attention to me or anything I was doing. But obviously they did. And they didn't want us back there anymore. And the thing that hurt, it was bad getting blackballed, but no one there were 5 people out of 500 that said thank you. And a lot of them went on to work there for another 20, 25 years, and nobody cared. Nobody picked up the phone and said, if it wasn't for you, none of that. So I became hurt. I became bitter. I didn't step in that building for a long time. It took a long time for Bill and I to put our toes back in that building. And, you know, time does heal things. I'm still angry about that, but I'm better about it. And it was time to write the book. And I thought, I think I can do this now. But it did. It took me 35 years to finally put pen to paper and write it.
And the book is called Saving Radio City Music Hall, A Dancer's True Story. And I and the rest of the city owe you a great deal, you and everyone else, a great deal of thanks and veneration, because this city would be a truly poorer place without Radio City Music Hall.
Thank you. That's very nice.
The idea that place, that spot at 50th Street and 6th Avenue in New York could be a glass and steel office building is just obscene.
Thank you. I agree with you completely on that, obviously. I don't wear the hero hat very well, but I certainly appreciate people saying lovely things like that, because when Bill and I go by the theater, we can't help but our heart beats a little faster.
Rosie Novellino, it's been a delight talking to you.
You
and
too.
And to relive and hear this story. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.